Development Community, or SADC for short, or SADC. 17th August is the day when SADC citizens commemorate the birth of SADC. Today, as we speak, the heads of government of the 16 nations of SADC are having a virtual summit to commemorate the occasion, keeping in mind the shared history of India and SADC in the context of their anti-colonial struggles, the close association of India with their liberation movements, and the independence experience of working together for shared goals of development. It is both natural and logical for Indian citizens to join this commemoration. This SADC commemoration is taking place during the worldwide pandemic COVID-19. So today we are going to discuss the post-COVID-19 scenario and how SADC and India look at the path to it. We have a distinguished panel of speakers. We have His Excellency Baraka Luvanda, High Commissioner of Tanzania and Chair of SADC Heads of Mission Group, New Delhi. Welcome, sir. Ambassador Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, former Indian High Commissioner to Namibia and South Africa. Thank you for joining us. We have Professor Aparajita Biswas, President, African Studies Association of India, and former Professor and Director, Center for African Studies, University of Mumbai. Professor Biswas joins us from Mumbai. We have still not been joined by Professor Mammo Muchie, Professor South African Research Chair, Innovation Studies at the Tshwane University of Technology, Pretoria. Hopefully, he will be joining us soon. Yours truly, Suhas Borker, Convener, Working Group on Alternative Strategies, and founder, editor of the Citizens First TV, CFTV, shall moderate the discussion. The COVID-19 pandemic has seriously impacted the fight against poverty, and all socio-economic growth projections have gone for a toss. SADC and India are expected to face the brunt of the fast-thinking global economy. A major downslide in industrial, tourism, and transport sectors outputs, with uncertainty of optimal farm outputs and skyrocketing healthcare costs, have undoubtedly disrupted the path to decimate poverty. In the case of India, there is also the problem of migrant labor, low-income daily wages, returning to their homes with a big question mark on their re-employment in the near future. And now reports are that they are coming back to the urban centers. India and the 16-nation SADC have had strong and deep ties of cooperation in the past, and now there is a strong need to further strengthen these ties to support and assist each other in the post-COVID-19 scenario. The post-COVID-19 path to recovery calls for out-of-the-box strategies to counter the fallout of the economic downturn and to meet the challenges of emergent priorities. So basically, we are going to discuss the challenges and opportunities in the post-COVID-19 world and how SADC nations and India can face the challenges and leverage the opportunities together. Before we begin the discussion, let me convey our warm felicitations to Excellency High Commissioner Luvanda and all other heads of mission of SADC in New Delhi on the 40th anniversary of SADC. Now I call upon Excellency Baraka Luvanda to open the discussion. When we were having a preparatory meeting on the 14th August, Excellency Luvanda had a very pertinent question. He asked us, when is post-COVID-19? Over to Excellency Luvanda.
Thank you very much, Professor Borker, our convener. It was with great sense of humility that I accepted the honor of proposing these remarks at the beginning of this special webinar conference. I'm deeply humbled that I speak to you in my capacity as chairperson, or rather outgoing person of the group of heads of mission in New Delhi from the Southern African Development Community, SADC. I will soon be passing on the baton to my colleague, the High Commissioner of Mozambique. But let me sincerely thank you, India International Center and the Working Group of Alternative Strategies for the excellent preparation of this conference despite the challenging time that we live in. This webinar conference to mark the 40th anniversary of SADC is timely and important as a platform to chart out the path to recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic and in the perspectives of the SADC-India cooperation. It also affords us the opportunity to take stock of the experiences and challenges we face in the context of COVID-19 and strategize the way forward. COVID-19 pandemic has so far infected millions and killed several 100,000 globally. The SADC region, like India, has not been spared. The full extent of COVID impact on global economy and livelihood of persons is unprecedented and huge, but not yet fully known. The IMF has predicted that the region will not get back to pre-pandemic level of GDP until 2022-23. The fiscal monitor released by the IMF in April 2020 highlighted that COVID-19 outbreak and its financial and economic consequences will cause a major increase in fiscal deficit and public debt load in 2020. The chairman of Tata Steel, Mr. Chandra Sekaran, was quoted recently saying, "This is for the first time since the Great Depression that both advanced and developing economies are in recession together." The assessment that was conducted by the SADC Secretariat this year on the social impacts of COVID-19 on SADC economies has shown that regional economic growth is expected to contract by an average of 3.8% in this year. There is a consensus that SADC region, as well as the entire sub-Saharan Africa, we are unfortunately less prepared to contain the novel virus to deal with its economic fallout. First, the capacity of the healthcare system to contain the spread of infection, handle emergencies, and provide care for the sick was very weak due to partly of many years of underinvestment in the healthcare system. Secondly, there was a lack of fiscal space to adequately fund either containment intervention in the health sector or safety nets to ameliorate the effect of this intervention, particularly for low-income members of the population. And thirdly, for a majority of the poor, a combination of low personal precautionary savings and inability to access the credit system in the absence of a formal welfare system meant that they had no means to finance their survival during lockdowns or shutdowns. A sharp decline of remittances from the diaspora out there has so far aggravated this difficulty. It has been suggested that there is still significant uncertainty about the recovery path, both globally and in our region, due to uncertainty of the path of infection after reopening from lockdowns. In the premises, therefore, the immediate response and strategy, given the overstretched state resources, must focus on a number of things. Number one, promotion of regional and international cooperation. This will allow quicker recovery out of the crisis and perhaps avoid protracted processes for normalization. In this regard, it is important to dialogue among SADC and development partners such as India on common challenges and strategies towards achieving a stable economic recovery. Number two, need to support small and medium-sized enterprises and informal sector is critical in supporting the livelihood of the majority of our people through job creation and retention. Number three, need to invest in a digital technology, and here I think that COVID-19 has created the rationale for acceleration and the broadening of digitalization of the entire economies. Number four, enhanced sharing of strategies amongst SADC and Indian stakeholders on addressing and leveraging the challenges presented by COVID-19 pandemic. India and SADC have had a long and strong deep ties, as has been alluded to by Professor Borker, in cooperation in the past, and now there is still a strong need to further strengthen these ties to support and assist in each other in the post-COVID scenario. Although investment has been substantially affected and even decreased in the wake of COVID, as the global economic climate recovers, further foreign direct investment is expected to capitalize on other industries and the member states whose productive potential remains untapped. The post-COVID-19 path to recovery calls, as has been pointed out by Professor Borker, the out-of-the-box strategies to counter the fallout of the economic downturn and meet the challenge of emergent priorities. For instance, in terms of digital economy, India is actively working with Africa in general and with the SADC in particular in transforming the economy on the continent through the software and soft infrastructure, among others. The decision, for instance, of BAT Airtel to expand its high-speed 4G data network across the continent by investing USD 2.4 billion is a welcome measure. Airtel Africa, the holding of BAT company, is now operating in 14 countries, offering 4G services to 10 of them. By and large, the post-COVID recovery calls for collective solidarity through strengthening existing partnerships among SADC and India. For instance, India-SADC cooperation in medical industry will undoubtedly boost the long-term availability of medical goods, vaccine, and services in the SADC region and support other economic sectors. That's why last week in Dar es Salaam, the Council of Ministers of SADC called for strong and coordinated measures for the region to address the impact of COVID, which threatens to reverse the gains made in our region, regional development and integration of the past 40 years. In closing, I should like to call on India to join other international efforts in supporting Global Fund to help countries recover better from the pandemic. This includes provision of debt relief in the form of debt cancellation to countries in need to enable them qualify for more borrowing. As we have seen, fighting COVID-19 by new borrowings will lead into more serious debt crisis in the very near future. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Excellency Luvanda, for giving us the roadmap for India-SADC cooperation in meeting the challenges of COVID-19 and the post-COVID scenario. Thank you very much. Now I would request Ambassador Shiv Shankar to come on. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, first of all, on the 40th anniversary of the Southern African Development Community, the regional successor to the Southern African Development Coordination Conference. I must say I feel a personal sense of satisfaction in this, in my participation, because I was in Lusaka immediately after the SADC, the predecessor of the SADC, was formed, basically as a battle by the frontline states against the apartheid regime, using all economic factors to liberate South Africa as well as themselves. And I was India's first High Commissioner in Namibia when the SADCC transformed into today's South African Development Community. To go straight into the topic of our discussion, I first must thank His Excellency, the High Commissioner of Tanzania, the outgoing chairperson country, for the very clear delineation of exactly how enormous the devastation caused by COVID-19 has been, probably unprecedented, and also what exactly is the road ahead for Africa. And I want to take off on I want to confine my remarks to just two things, two aspects among the dozens and dozens of things that need to be done. One, of course, is both of them I think are important to tide over and the road ahead to solve the dilemma posed between the conflicting demands of lives and livelihood, to contain the disease, to contain the virus, as well as then to take steps for the set nations on the path to economic growth. And secondly, to make a few practical suggestions on what India and SADC can do together. The need for international cooperation is self-evident. Greater international cooperation indeed could have led to greater international preparedness and early warning systems. This was not a sudden and unanticipated calamity. We had SARS, we had MERS, and we had Ebola, and which are in recent memory, and which offered a learning curve. Warnings of pandemic possibilities were issued by many scientists and institutions, but ignored for the lack of institutional and binding arrangements and perhaps other political priorities. The international cooperation among scientists happily allowed for the quick identification of the genome and is fueling the race for drugs and for treatment, as well as the all-important vaccine. And yet the distribution of the drugs and the vaccine, when they do arrive, is in danger of not being equitably spread. For example, the United States is already shopping around the world, snapping up contracts for potential vaccines for itself. And therefore, international and regional cooperation must make sure that remedial drugs and vaccines are made available to developing nations with fewer financial resources and clout. There will be international and regional cooperation needed for minimizing the rate of infection by coordinating rules of safe travel, movement of goods and people, especially professionals involved in the fight against COVID. Maybe export and import restrictions need to be reduced and eliminated where necessary, and if necessary, by derogation from WTO rules. Unfortunately, the world seems to be moving in the opposite direction. Countries are turning inwards and protectionism is rising. The new Cold War between the two heavyweights of the world's nations, the US and China, are leading to conflicts instead of cooperation in the pandemic battle itself. Witness the boycott of the WHO by the US, undermining the role and financial viability of the only international coordinating body in the public health area, and the abdication of the Security Council in mobilizing world governments, with the US wanting to name China as the source of the pandemic and China equally determined to prevent it. International cooperation will be needed above all for providing the necessary financial resources for fighting the pandemic, and this is particularly important for the continent of Africa, and for bringing the virus under control, and then to lift the developing countries out of the economic morass towards the path of growth. This will not only need a very high standard of governance and policy reforms, but significant amounts of official development assistance. And here, recent economic history does not bode well. Over the years, the promises of development aid for Africa by donor countries have never met declared targets. This must change, including the assistance given by the World Bank and the IMF. Some statements for increased and enhanced assistance have already been made, but these must be translated completely on the ground. Finally, what can India and the SADC do together? There is a similarity in the challenges faced by India, a subcontinent made up of states where populations are as large as many mid-sized and even large countries, and the nations of Africa, as both face the seminal dilemma of being forced into lockdowns for containing the virus, inevitably leading to a devastating shrinking of economic activity, loss of jobs, and increasing poverty. The pressure to unlock down increases to trigger economic growth. And this in turn could trigger a second wave, which has to be avoided at all costs. I offer some practical suggestions. Intensive and result-oriented measures will need action on the ground. First, every policy measure lives or dies through implementation, which in our countries is always the elephant in the room. We are fortunate in having Indian missions in almost every African country, and many African countries have their missions in India. The role of the missions in initiating, monitoring, and implementing policy decisions on the ground is crucial. Every mission should appoint an officer solely responsible for all action in this specific area, and governments should issue instructions to their missions for giving the highest priority to this in the mission's tasks. Secondly, India is the pharmacy of the world, especially in generic drugs. It is also a world leader in vaccine production. It is heartening that we have already supplied many African countries and will continue to do so, as confirmed by our government. The same applies to the vaccine as and when it is available and approved, whether wholly produced in India or under license from others. Thirdly, India has a well-established development cooperation program with almost every African country. This should be energized and expanded. Under this, a host of remedial measures can be undertaken, including training, capacity building, medical infrastructure, information exchange, joint research programs and testing, and so on. Fourthly, to address the immediate problem of job losses and promotion of employment, it is notable that the vast majority of workers in both African nations as well as in India are in the informal sector, and it is here that employment opportunities can be generated quickly. For this, discussions should be initiated and experiences shared on policy measures that need to be taken between both our sides. And finally, in the area of financial resources, while India is not technically a donor country, it has provided substantial financial assistance amounting to billions of dollars by way of concessional loans and grants, especially in the context of the India-Africa summits that have been held in the last few years. The utilization of these should be fast-tracked. Given the crisis nature of the pandemic, if some resources allocated for specific long-term projects need to be diverted for this purpose, this may be allowed by mutual consent. I thank you for this opportunity to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, for those pinpointed specific measures to be adopted by both SADC and India. Thank you very much. Now I request Professor Aparajita Biswas to come, and then welcome Professor Mammo for joining us from Pretoria. Thank you very much. Yeah. Professor Biswas, please.
Shall I? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Borker, for inviting me in this important webinar conference today. So the global outbreak of the novel coronavirus has sent the world in a state of panic and alarm. The most affected of 16-member SADC region is South Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, Mauritius. How we SADC countries are facing the colossal challenge of COVID-19. Now, the healthcare system in these countries are very, very fragile, with minimal critical care capacity to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. Moreover, these countries are fighting the disease on multiple fronts. The healthcare system are in precarious condition and is struggling to treat cholera, measles, Ebola, and now coronavirus. Now, on the economic front, the pandemic has pushed SADC region in a certain uncertain condition. In the region, implementation of lockdown is having a devastating impact on the livelihood of informal sectors, workers and traders in urban areas with no savings and limited state social security and safety nets. The ILO record says that the informal sectors back South African economy, South African workforce, 40% of his workforce and contribute 30% of his GDP. Now, the social unrest has already increased in this region and beyond, prompting protests in South Africa, Niger, Mozambique, and Senegal, among other countries. Now, China, being a SADC major trading partner, was quick to signal its intent to help the region cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. It dispatched medical protective equipment, treating kits, ventilators, and medical masks to several African countries. However, its donation diplomacy didn't work now because of its perceived role in this crisis situation. Reports of discrimination against the African students studying in China during the virus outbreak led to anger and exasperation among students and African leaders. It has added fuel to already existing anti-Chinese sentiments against its expanding economic influence in African countries and SADC region as well. Now, in this difficult time, India has shown its diplomatic acumen by bolstering its soft power. It has already dispatched a medical assistance to 25 African countries. Prime Minister Modi is in touch with all the African Union officials and various African leaders and has decided to send critical drugs and medical devices to various Africans, including SADC region countries, as a part of India's humanitarian aid to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the India has evacuated also not only its own citizens from one region, which is the epicentric of COVID-19 outbreak, but also citizens from South Africa, Madagascar, along with other Indian Ocean region countries. The Indian Navy brings ship INS Kesari has recently sailed with medical equipments and traditional Indian medicine and food grain towards Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar, and Comoros. Recently, India extended the e-tech course on COVID-19 pandemic to reach healthcare workers in Africa. Now, moreover, since 2009, India has undertaken some major initiatives in the healthcare sector in Africa through its Pan-African E-Network project conceived by late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam in 2009. The PANAP connects India's 5 super specialty hospitals with 53 remote hospitals and 53 VVIP nodes to all countries through satellite and fiber optic links, and providing tele-education and telemedicine services to them. Now, SADC region is highly benefited with these hospitals. Telemedicine service is a game changer in a health sector in all the African countries. University of Botswana, Makerere University, University of Rwanda, University of Malawi, University of Ghana have been the front runners in making up these courses, thus benefiting the remote areas of African region. The Indian pharmaceutical companies are doing their bit for African health sector. India, which has been a major exporter of medicine, even before the coronavirus pandemic, is sending is sending the malaria medicine and paracetamol tablets in such a cheaper rate to SADC countries. So there is a saying that crisis brings opportunities. COVID-19 pandemic crisis presents a key opportunity to India to present itself as a compassionate partner and solidify its status in Africa and SADC region as well. There is a lot of goodwill for India in the region, and the time has come to initiate strong foreign policy measures to diplomatically proactive and invest in the development facilities of the health sector in the SADC region and help African countries achieve their Millennium Development Goal of 2063. Now, the greater cooperation among the countries are imperative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Biswas, for that incisive input. Now we will go over to Professor Mammo Muchie.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Can
Professor,
you
for joining.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Since you have joined a little later, can I now introduce you, sir? Professor Muchie is the professor at the South African Research Chair, Innovation Studies at the Tshwane University of Technology, Pretoria. So he is now joining us from Pretoria. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to join you. And what I like to say is a few words about me and India. We had a school, elementary school, called St. Joseph School. And the first director was from India, Mr. Joseph, we used to call him. And we had a lot of the teachers were Indians. And the people who taught me A, B, C, D are Indians. So I just want to tell you that at that time, I think the former President Jawaharlal Nehru and Emperor Haile Selassie, Ethiopia was one of the countries. I'm Ethiopian originally. And so when India became independent, I think we are one of the few countries who had an embassy in India. So because of that, we had a connection with India. And then I think we had something like 700 teachers that India sent, I think paid initially by India. And we benefited. So a lot of my students, my classmates that still exist all over the world, still remember you very well. So I just want to start with what link I had with India. Now, I think the good thing about India and Africa generally, and then Africa, India and SADC, is very interesting. There is as you know, the India-Africa Forum Summit goes on. It has been going on for a long time. And some of the most interesting things that India has done, which is quite different from many other relationships with our African countries. What I like really very much is for countries like Tanzania, you waive the loans. You give loans, but at the same time, you are also doing that. So you started a memorandum of understanding. You signed it with the SADC on October 14, 1997. And then you did it on almost every sphere, on agriculture, water resource management, human resource development, entrepreneurial development, promotion of small and medium scale industries, non-conventional energy sources also, and commerce, diplomacy, banking. And now you have come to a most interesting thing also that has come is with ICT, information communication technologies. You are also involved in the e-commerce sector, the ICT park in the SADC area that you are doing. For example, with South Africa, you are more interested in the challenges that SADC countries have in terms of infrastructure. So India ICT skills gap, the gap that exists in the SADC area, you have been bringing in HC technologies, YPro technologies, Zensar
I think we have lost the link with Professor Mammo. Probably he'll join us a little later. Can we now go into the question and answer session, because we have limited time? So we have a question now from Rahul Maslikar from Pune. And he is asking about the Pan-African e-network, which has been operationalized. And he's asking whether it is being utilized for coordinating efforts by various governments in their fight against COVID-19 pandemic. So would the High Commissioner, Tanzania, Excellency Luvanda, like to answer that? Then we can ask Professor Biswas whether the COVID-19 pandemic, are we using that for that pandemic? Are we using the Pan-African e-network? Yeah.
Please unmute.
Yeah, please
Thank
go
you
ahead.
very much. I would like to confirm that the Pan-African telemedicine project has been very useful to Tanzania. We have two hospitals, one Ocean Road Hospital and one in Bugando, and it's doing it is doing a very good job. And we would like really to thank the government of India that by approving the second part of the program, and we are going to benefit more even after the pandemic. So yes, I confirm it has been useful in many ways.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Would you like to chip in, Professor Biswas?
No, I agree with, yes, I agree that Uganda, they are using it very very successfully, and also that University of Botswana, as I have seen, University of Malawi, and these other Macquarie University, they are using these telemedicine courses, and the students have the benefit of sitting at home and study this. So I think the Pan-African this network has been is going to be popular in the COVID-19 phases too.
Okay. Is Professor Mammo back? Can we have him back now? Or it seems we have lost him for the time. We're trying to get him back. So there is a question to Professor Mammo Muchie, if he remembers the full name of his teacher, but that we'll have to wait for him.
Mr. Joseph, he said.
Yes. So, Professor, can you tell us what is the outreach of this telemedicine program exactly? I mean, can you tell us in detail? Little more detail about the outreach of the telemedicine program?
Me? Are you asking me or
Yes.
Tanzanian? Okay. The telemedicine program has been reaching to many hospitals in the remote areas, not in the urban areas mainly, the remote areas. And one I have seen when I was visiting Uganda, I was seeing that they were telling me that one surgeon was operating in Bombay hospital, and the patient is in the remote areas of Uganda. So so I was feeling it was very surprising to me how these things are happening, and so they have these through this satellite and the fiber links, and I am sure that SADC countries that like Tanzania and other and South Africa are being benefiting with this Pan-African network. Yes.
Yeah, can I ask Ambassador Shiv Mukherjee about the financial structure we can build with the SADC nations to help in the post-COVID scenario?
Actually, the good yes, thank you. The good news there is that, right from the 50s, as far back as that, starting in a very limited sense, but over the years growing into very, very impressively large programs, we've already have a solid foundation for development cooperation. We have ITEC, the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so under which we have taken a whole variety of projects in almost every African country, from feasibility studies to pilot projects to training in India, as well as setting up institutes for training and capacity building in Africa. So the logistics of working together using financial resources by way of loans or grants from India with individual African countries are very well established. In fact, after the Indo-African Africa Forum Summit that was held in Addis Ababa, where I think our then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had announced concessional loans and grants of up to $4 billion. The utilization rate of that was very impressive, much better than before, where the slow pace of implementation used to be a worry. So I don't think setting up new financial architectures is really necessary. The foundation for that already exists with virtually every virtually every African country, especially with the SADC, with Eastern and Southern Africa. But my point is that given the real crisis nature of this situation, all that has to be energized. All that has to be made more flexible, less bureaucracy, less red tape, faster disbursements, faster implementation. That would be necessary, and for that we need the political will at the highest levels of government, and I'm sure that will be available.
Fine, thank you. We have now a question which has come in from Germany, and that's Philip Gay. He says that can we have is there a potential for trilateral cooperation between India, African countries, and European countries committed to better international cooperation? And he says it in the context of the Trump administration pulling out of WHO. So we would like the panel to respond. First, I would ask Professor Biswas to respond. Trilateral cooperation.
Yes, it is now imperative, I'll say, because now in the post-COVID situation, now we have seen during the pandemic time how all the not only developing countries, this time the developed countries have been, they are in the mess. So we had now the developed countries are, I think that they will realize the utility of cooperation with the developing countries at least in the healthcare sector, because this if we have this cooperation with this European Union, with India, and also with all the African countries together, to have this one platform, to bring out a vaccine, it will be, I think, the much faster, and it will be much useful. And not only the vaccine, afterwards also in this health sector, these are a very precarious condition, very bad condition. Also with India, we are slightly better than Africa, but we have seen the health sectors have also, it is in a mess in the developed countries as well. So it is the time to think out of the box, or to think, very seriously about the cooperation in the healthcare center, along with the economic development, economic cooperation and development too.
Yeah, Ambassador Shiv Mukherjee.
Yes, this is an extremely important question, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to say something on it. This has been talked about and actually worked on for a long, long time. I myself have worked on projects in my dozen years in Southern Africa involving partners, either as a third country partner or an international organization such as the World Bank. The fact is that India is a significant donor country for Africa, but the resources needed, especially in the post COVID-19 world for economic recovery, are going to be huge, much, much larger than the financial resources that are available today. And one way of tackling this, not the only way, but one of the most important ways of tackling this would be multilateral cooperation. What India brings to the table, to give a specific example, one of the most important target sectors for creating jobs, livelihood for the masses, as and when we are fighting the pandemic and particularly after, is going to be the MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. That is where the focus has to be to promote immediate, urgently needed employment and jobs. And there, India brings to the table a vast amount of experience of what has worked and what hasn't worked. And we've already worked on this with African countries, virtually every African country, especially in SADC countries. We've had the experience of working in a limited way with European nations, but in fact, that experience is there. In recognizing the need for that, for instance, there is already an agreement between India and Japan to work on a very, very ambitious Africa corridor. Japan has a huge assistance program for Africa, TICAD, and India and Japan together plan to marry their endowments, their separate skills. India brings to the table, as I said, not only its experience, but also its experience in reducing costs, whereas Japan comes in with also technology, but also financial resources. So this is something that has to happen. There is no two ways about it.
Fine, thank you. Now, Professor Mammo has joined us. Sorry to have lost you. So can you continue? In the meanwhile, one of our associates, Ambassador KP Fabian, has identified your teacher. Was it Joseph Katakal? Was he the man? Huh?
Yes, Joseph, yes.
Was it Joseph Katakal?
Yes, Joseph, yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
So where did I stop? Where did it?
No, you go ahead with
you were talking about the already established cooperation between India and Africa following the summits, the Africa and India Forum summits. The fact that India is working in different sectors, including agriculture. That's where you left off.
Okay. So thank you so much. At least you. I don't know why it got cut off. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. We have to improve our
sincere apologies. But let me say something. I think it's a pity because I say some nice, interesting things, and now maybe I may not be able to say them. They came out nicely, but they didn't go through. Now, on October 14, 1997, India signed the Memorandum of Understanding on Economic Cooperation with the SADC region. But as I told you, also we have India has two. There's also Africa-India Summit that goes on, but there's also the SADC area. And the majority, the more exchange India has is with the SADC countries, mainly, because South Africa, Mauritius, Mozambique, and this kind of countries, Angola, and so on, the Botswana, these countries seem to be the more active engagement that India has. But what India did was develop a relationship on agriculture, water resource management, human resource development, entrepreneurial development, particularly on small and medium scale industries, to promote them, to develop them, and and then also apply not on the conventional energy sources, but non-conventional energy sources, and then commerce, banking, diplomacy, on all these things India has done. But the most interesting thing now that also India has developed is ICT, information communication technologies, e-commerce industry, and ICT parks, innovation parks, and then trying to also engage with the challenges that these SADC countries have. They have infrastructure challenges, skills gap challenges. For them, what they have done is, for example, they connected with technology, like industries like HCH technology, Wipro technology, Zensar technology, Invoice technology. All this, they then have also their own Bharti Airtel acquired. They acquired the Zen Africa, and then they paid something like $10.7 billion to get it, and then they are now developing it and making it possible for many countries also to gain from it on the ICT and e-commerce sector, the digital technology sector. This is very, very interesting what they are doing, and I think that's quite important. What I like us to focus on is that mainly the most important development that I like India to actually generate with the relationship with Africa is to create a new, in the way we have now faced this challenge, the COVID and other challenge, other problems. What I like us to do is on every sphere, on the economic sphere, on the health sphere, on the social sphere, on the environmental sphere, on the knowledge sphere, on the education sphere, in almost all arenas, we need to create a new velocity of light development, where the relationship is based on the principle of mutual benefit. This principle of mutual benefit is not just an expression of value, but it must be accountable, measurable, tangible, explicit, and everyone knows it, understands it. The win-win situation should be done. We have, as you know, in Africa, we have the challenge before with Europe and all other things. Africa had no equal relationships. Still, there is a big problem. Many countries in the French part of Africa, still their treasury is mainly run by the French banks, and the inflation rate is determined by France, not them. Because we have that kind of challenge, we need now new patterns when the emerging economies like developing economies like India, China, and others are coming. Then I would like India to use its values and philosophy to develop a very clear relationship with the rest of India. One of the good things India did was, like loans that it gave, to Tanzania and others. It has actually, it's waived the loans, and the outstanding loans that these countries have. So what it means is, when we have examples like this, they must be explicitly stated, so people should know it very much. And then the relationship pattern is a new pattern, a new model, a new paradigm. This has to be explicit. I think the main contribution India could give to Africa and even to the world is to create a pattern of relationship that is not done by just simple competition and taking advantage and gaining and so on. But it should be saying, like, if I benefit, you should also benefit. There must be explicit gains for both of us. In fact, I gain when you also gain. When you lose and I gain, we both lose. Some logic like that has to be developed. And since you have the great philosophy that you are one human family, you should apply that one. And I heard your president, Prof, Modi. He actually had a speech I heard yesterday, and then he mentioned this philosophy, which is very, very good. And I think what we need is we need to really move in this time of difficult time when we have this COVID-19 world disorder. We need to come to a real order where we create a new approach where our values that are very, very, very relevant and useful that have come from sources like India, for example. We have a philosophy called Ubuntu. You have a philosophy of Kubra, which is very, very important, that if we could combine this kind of philosophies also, it will make a huge difference to create a new pattern, a new logic, a new relationship. And that relationship is what I like India to offer. And now we need it more because at this time, what I can tell you about this COVID-19, what it's going to do is global economy is going to go down, and the relationship that you have with the different African countries will be affected. Many things are going to be affected. When this is affected, when the economy goes down, it also affects the health, the social aspect, the relationship aspect. Then we need to find also a solution where this negative impact on the economy does not affect the pattern of relationship, the MOU you signed, many things you have tried to do. Those kinds of things are what I like to suggest to you. I think what is very, very important now is now we need to move on to a new direction where understanding the health crisis will create more economic crisis, and the economic crisis will create more health crisis. There'll be a value chain and then social and other problems. Because this situation happens, a new approach is necessary. Even new relationship approach needs to be developed very systematically to make sure that that relationship actually tries to help us to go from a COVID to a post-COVID, from a COVID-19 disorder to a post-COVID reorder. Some global reorders can come. It's not just that you are helping only Africa and the SADC area, but I think the values that you have that have come from you, that I always say to my friends, to my Indian friends, that we should not just call India a nation. It's beyond a nation. It's got this civilizational, it's a civilization almost. That civilizational value that have come from you, that is the kind of value that should be spread across the world, so that the world could go from what we have now, the military-industrial complex of the Americans and others that they create. We move to a health humanity complex, some kind of new, with the kind of great philosophy you have. You should also use it and apply it very systematically to do that. In fact, my friends, we have been involved in India. We had what we call India Licks, the Indian Academy on Knowledge, Learning, Competence Building Systems. I was involved in the beginning with it with my friends. I come to India often. I was in Johar, associate professor there, and then and also I go to Kerala, many other places I have gone to India. And then what is very important is I am saying to my friends, we should now develop what I call an India Africa Research Institute, where we actually develop it, and then we are discussing it, and we are thinking that we could include many of these interesting points, not just the challenges like the COVID and many other things that may come now, but also the earlier parts that have gone through, from what we could learn from it, and then create a new paradigm, a new model, a new example, where the relationship India creates with Africa and the SADC, all other places, can become an example for the rest of the world. So I like India to be the example of the example. So please advise all your policymakers to make policy learning to make sure that this India could probably save the world, be a lifesaver of the world, not the current virus-stricken world by creating all kinds of unnecessary selfish competition, self-interest, and everything that is destroying many of our lives. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking a bit of time. But
No, that's
unfortunately.
No, actually, the take home from what you just said, Professor Mammo, I think the mix between Ubuntu and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, I think that's that's our philosophy. I mean, it's not now; it's been there for ages. This philosophy of ours, we look at the whole world as a family. You also do the same, you see. So Africa and India have a gel, which to High Commissioner Luvanda, we brought on the web today. Thank you very much. Now, the time now is very limited with us. So can we just take a round of points which, if you would like to highlight one major point which you would like to push through this webinar. So I would request Excellency Luvanda to open this point-wise. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Just one point, maybe I forgot to point out that Indians are known for their culture of inbound tourism, and post-COVID, I would like to call on Indians to think about outbound tourism. Tourism for us now in the region is a lifeline. So it has collapsed, and so it will need a boost from you people to change the culture, liking coming out there.
Ambassador Shiv Mukherjee.
Well, it'll sound a little funny, but the one point I would like to stress is, on the ground, I have seen in my 40-year career in diplomacy in different countries that, as I mentioned in my remarks, the elephant in the room, for all the goodwill, for all the political impulses, the elephant in the room is implementation on the ground. I mean, conferences, summits, and fine-sounding statements and wonderful policy decisions taken are all utterly and totally meaningless unless they're implemented properly on the ground. So the one point I would like to stress is that, listen, the very important, very senior people, such as our prime ministers and presidents and ministers and a very big industrialists and so on, they are not going to monitor the cooperation between, let's say, SADC and India all the time. So the one point I would like to stress is the government should tell their embassies and high commissions, designate an officer, a senior officer, for full-time attention to COVID-related matters, short, medium, and long-term, and tell every mission to initiate, monitor, and implement projects decided upon between the two sides. Without that, the rest will be all just rhetoric that melts like snow on the desert's face.
Thank you. Now, Professor Biswas, there are reports today which have come in that is a rapid, inexpensive saliva test that has come in for COVID. So we have a long tradition of not making profits on medicine. We started the concept of generic medicine. Now, do you think that that would fit into one point which you would like to say?
One point I will have 2 points. This Ayurvedic network have already been started by Ministry of External Affairs, and so that will be, I think, hugely popular with most of the African countries, and because they are also very much dependent upon the African traditional medicine. The other point I want to say and to appeal to this our High Commissioner, His Excellency, that Tanzania is too much dependent upon China for its export and import. Now the slowdown of Chinese economy has collapsed this SADC economy, SADC countries. So India has so many years of relationship with Africa, and also have been, our Prime Minister has been very, very proactive in his Africa policy, and now he has put Africa as in the priority areas. So why don't you, through your good office, I want to appeal to these SADC governments that they have to diversify their economy. China is not the only country that they can help. Now you have seen that because of their slowdown, now all the commodities prices have been zero, and these African countries have been suffered a lot. So they have to diversify their things, and India should come in the forefront of the in the cooperation discourse. Thank you.
Professor Mammo,
Yes.
well, in this, Professor Biswas didn't pick up my point about generic medicine. Will you do that?
Yes. I think, can I just say this?
Yes, please.
There are two models now on the medicine side. There is a scientific one, and there is the indigenous knowledge one. With the indigenous one, we use revelational kind of. There are many ways by which our plants and many people identify sources for us to do the cure or the prevention. On the technical, there's this, the medicine side from the science, the medical doctors and the hospitals and all that. You are going for vaccines. I heard something like 78 countries are now competing to try to create the vaccines. Can I just tell you the country where I come from, Ethiopia, where there is indigenous knowledge, Dr. Abevich is her name. She actually said there is a medicine that can be used to prevent it. And then even the Ministry of Health actually was with her. And then you know about Madagascar. They also said that they are using traditional medicine to try to approach this problem of preventing it and so on. But then the WHO was saying that this is not scientific. And of course, Madagascar pulled out of the WHO. So what I'm saying to you is that on the knowledge sphere, we should do epistemological fusion, not separation. We should not say the scientific knowledge, the kind of medical, in the tradition, with the university, with the learning and all this that we do. That approach can also help us. It may not. Often when you develop a vaccine, you take a vaccine, it may solve that problem, but it can also create other problems to you. I'm a bit, sincerely speaking, I do not like to go to doctors and anything like that. When I grew up, I had an aunt who used to go to the village, to the plants, and used to cure so many people who have rabies. And then she used to say to me, it's you who I will tell, but now I won't tell you, because that was her intellectual property. Because if she tells me, I'm going to tell my friends. I was a young boy. So she said to me, no. Can you imagine? But I saw it. She treated lots of people. So we must value also our traditional knowledge. In Africa and in India and all this, with still a lot of cultures, we haven't lost it yet. What we need to do is all of us who are doing innovation, invention, all these scientific things that are on the technology side, we should be going now to the rural areas, find out what they do, and find a way to innovate it more. We should be building on it. That rich knowledge, that ocean of knowledge, is drying up for no good reason other than because we copy all this knowledge that comes from the Western world. Please, 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 let's not ignore the indigenous part. Let's also not ignore this thing that these people are working on vaccines. On the vaccine side, I must just add another point. It's not just the governments that are competing. It's also companies. They are also wanting to make money. This is the biggest problem, and money is not good. What we need to do is the health of the people matters. That is what we should be working on. I don't think we're working on it. So my understanding is that all our governments should be really committing R&D, research and development, on the indigenous knowledge side, so that we value this traditional medicine and herbal medicine, all these other things we need to do. Maybe that would be what we could find as a solution to help us from this COVID-19. Thank you.
Mr. Borker, one second can I get for responding these generic drugs?
Yeah, go ahead.
And because these India's generic drugs are very, very popular in most of the African countries, and mainly the Cipla and Ranbaxy has been huge. It's a game changer that when they have introduced very cheaper medicine for HIV, and the malaria drugs, because in the multinational companies are selling those drugs in a much higher price, and India's price was much lower. So there was a huge competition by our with our pharmaceutical industry in this with with these Western multinationals to in these African markets.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
I think we have crossed the time now, so we'll have to
Yeah.
close. I think this has been it's been a wonderful discussion, and thanks to Excellency Luvanda for taking the initiative, bringing us all together on the 40th anniversary of that. I think this should continue, and we as Professor Mammo said, work together. I mean, we are, I think, genetically so,
Yes.
Africa and
All
India,
Africans.
Yeah.
and
All
especially
Africans.
northern
Yeah.
part of Africa, because you see, we sent a barrister, and you gave us a Mahatma, and the same way as Adiba used to say that
Yeah.
sitting in Robben Island, that you make adversity into opportunity. So I think this COVID-19 has at least virtually brought us closer. You are speaking from Pretoria, and Biswas, Professor Biswas is speaking from Mumbai, which is the gateway for us to reach.
Yeah.
You'll take a flight from Mumbai to Johannesburg or Dar es Salaam. You can't go from New Delhi. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's always
Take
so much.
23 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you, Ambassador Shiv Mukherjee. Thank you, Professor Biswas. Thank you, Professor Mammo. Thank you very much, Excellency Luvanda. Thank you.
We thank
Thank
all of
you.
us.
Stay
Thank
well,
you.
stay well, stay
Thank you.
safe.
Congratulations for
Stay
the
safe.
40th anniversary. And
Thank you.
yes.